March 2026, three forces, one window, 1 month in which something that takes years to assemble arrives simultaneously, astronomical, energetic and numerological, at the same point in time. No single force would be sufficient on its own. The convergence of all three in one 31-day window is not something you can move to a different month or defer until conditions are more convenient. These forces do not negotiate with the calendar. They arrive on the schedule written into the structure of the cycles that produce them. They were already in motion before this month began, and the window they are creating, together at this exact intersection, is not something you schedule for next year. It is happening now. A month that appears, from the outside, identical to any other month, 31 days ordinary in its surface texture, can carry a completely different internal structure. The forces beneath what is visible are not announced by the calendar. They are tracked by those who know what to look for. In March 2026, three forces that have been building separately are arriving at the same point. The ones who recognize them will look back on this month as the precise location where the trajectory of their life changed direction. Not because they did something extraordinary, because they recognized something extraordinary that was already happening. You can already feel that something is different about this month, the sense that events are compressing, that things which would normally take weeks are resolving in days, that decisions feel weightier than their surface circumstances would justify, that patterns which have been running in the background for months are suddenly surfacing, demanding to be addressed. This is not anxiety. This is recognition. The three forces that are converging in March 2026 are not arriving silently. They are making themselves felt in exactly this way, in the acceleration, in the surfacing of what had been submerged, in the heightened quality of each day's texture. What you've been feeling has a structure, and that structure is what we are mapping tonight. Before we go deeper into this, if this kind of knowledge speaks to you, subscribe to the channel. This is where we keep building on this work together. At a very specific moment on March 20th, 2026, something happens that has happened every year since the Earth has had its current orbital geometry. The Sun crosses the celestial equator, the precise astronomical threshold where day and night are held in perfect balance. 12 hours of light, 12 hours of dark, the vernal equinox. And in the second that this balance is achieved, something that ancient traditions across 5 continents independently recognized as a threshold moment becomes present again. Not because they agreed on a date, because they observed the same phenomenon independently and arrived at the same conclusion. This is the moment when the cosmic scales tip from one season to the next, and in that tipping, a window opens that carries properties unavailable at any other point in the year. What is the spring equinox as an energetic force beyond its astronomical definition? The honest answer requires 2 levels. At the astronomical level, it is precisely what it appears to be, the point where the Sun crosses the celestial equator, beginning the period of increasing daylight in the northern hemisphere. At the energetic level, through the lens of Hermetic teaching, it is something more specific, the moment where the principle of correspondence is made literal at a cosmic scale. As above, so below. When the macro scale reaches perfect balance between light and dark, the conditions in the microcosm, in the individual life, in the individual consciousness, are at their most responsive to directed intention. The scale above is balanced. The scale below becomes most easily moved. Stonehenge, the pyramid of Kukulkan at Chichen Itza, the temples of Angkor Wat, the great Sphinx of Giza, precisely oriented to the equinox sunrise, the ancient temple of Abu Simbel, where the rising sun on specific dates of the year illuminates the inner sanctum with surgical precision. These structures were not built to mark the equinox as a curiosity. They were built to catch it, to be inside the exact moment when the equinox arrives, positioned so that the architecture itself participates in the threshold. The builders of these structures, separated by thousands of miles and thousands of years, all arrived at the same conclusion. This moment is significant enough to orient an entire civilization's construction program around. The convergence of that independent recognition is the evidence of genuine observation. Write in the comments today's date and complete the sentence. In March 2026, and write what you are activating, stated as already complete, not what you intend, what you are recognizing as already in motion. The spring equinox, read through the Hermetic framework, is the annual demonstration of the law of correspondence, operating at the largest visible scale. Above, the sun at the celestial equator, light and dark in precise equilibrium. Below, the individual practitioner at the threshold of a new season, their internal landscape reflecting the external balance. The Hermetic instruction here is specific. The equinox is not a moment to perform a ritual at. It is a moment to be in a state that corresponds to what is above. When the cosmic scale is balanced, the practitioner who is internally balanced, who has done the work of bringing their intention and their current reality into alignment, is positioned at the exact point where the law of correspondence can work most powerfully. The equinox doesn't do the work. It amplifies the work that has already been done. What the blood moon of March 3 opened was not a portal that closed behind it. The Hermetic and esoteric traditions that tracked lunar events consistently described the period following a full moon, especially a blood moon or lunar eclipse, not as an ending but as a gestation period, a 30-day window in which what was activated at the peak of the lunar cycle moves through its natural gestation before its release point arrives. The blood moon that opened this month did not close when the moon set. It opened a cycle, and that cycle's natural culmination point, the release of what was activated and gestated, falls directly at the spring equinox. The blood moon and the equinox are not two separate events happening in the same month. They are the two phases of one continuous activation cycle. Something in you recognized that the blood moon was significant. Perhaps you performed a practice. Perhaps you simply felt the shift. The heightened intensity of the days around March 3rd, the quality of attention those days carried, the sense that something was being decided or clarified at a level below conscious thought. Whatever you held in your awareness during that period, whatever intentions, recognitions, or decisions were present, those are still gestating. They have not completed their cycle. The gestation period is not passive time. It is the period in which what was planted at the blood moon is being formed into its pre-manifestation structure. The equinox is not the beginning of the work. It is the culmination of work that has been happening since March 3rd. Somewhere in the preserved teachings of the Hermetic tradition, a practitioner encountering the number 3 for the first time as an operating principle, not as quantity, but as quality, experienced a recognition that cannot be fully transmitted in language. The triad is not simply 3 things, it is the principle of creation itself. The 1, the undifferentiated unity. The 2, the duality that produces tension, polarity, the push and pull that generates movement. The 3, the synthesis that resolves the duality into something new, something that neither pole could produce alone. Creation does not happen at the level of 1 or 2, it happens at 3. And Hermes Trismegistus, thrice great, carries this principle encoded in his very name. 3 times great, not as a measure of magnitude, but as the designation of the one who operates at the level of the 3rd, the creative synthesis. Why does the number 3 carry specific weight in March 2026? March is the 3rd month. 2026 reduces to 10, which reduces to 1. The month of 3 meets the year of 1. In Hermetic numerology, 1 and 3 carry a specific relationship. The 1 is the unity from which all things emerge, and the 3 is the creative principle through which the 1 manifests the many. When the month of 3 meets the year of 1, the conditions for creation are structurally aligned at the level of the calendar itself. And this falls, not by coincidence, but by the structure of the calendar and the convergence of cycles, in the same month as the equinox and the blood moon's gestation completion. 3 forces, 3 levels: the astronomical, the energetic, the numerological. March 2026 is where they arrive together. Force 1, the equinox threshold, the cosmic scale balanced, the law of correspondence at its annual peak. Force 2, the blood moon completion, 30 days of gestation arriving at its release point exactly as the equinox opens. Force 3, the hermetic triad, the creative principle of 3 operating at the level of the month itself, meeting the year of the 1. 3 forces that have been building separately. 1 month where they arrive at the same point. The convergence was not designed by any human intelligence. It is structural, built into the mechanics of how astronomical cycles, energetic cycles, and numerical cycles intersect. And the window it creates is not something that extends indefinitely. The month is already moving. If this content is speaking to you, let me know by liking this video. It helps more people find this work at the right moment. At least twice in recorded history, the convergence of an equinox with a significant lunar event and a numerologically significant year was tracked and treated as a triple activation by the cultures that preserved this knowledge. The Persian tradition of Nowruz, the New Year celebration on the vernal equinox, was designed to fall during specific lunar phases in years of particular numerological significance. The Egyptian New Year calculation, which used the equinox, the heliacal rising of Sirius, and the Nile flood as its 3 calibration points, was precisely this kind of multi-force tracking. The Vedic tradition's treatment of Vasanta, the spring equinox period, was explicitly shaped by its relationship to the lunar cycle of that year. Independent traditions. The same principle. When multiple cycles arrive at the same point simultaneously, the window they create is qualitatively different from any single cycle operating alone. The scientific dimension of the equinox carries more weight than most people recognize. Research on circadian rhythm disruption shows that the body's biological clock is sensitive to changes in light-dark ratios, and the equinox marks the most rapid rate of change in daily light duration of the entire year. The rate of change of light exposure, not just the amount of light, is what the circadian system responds to most strongly. This means that during the days surrounding the equinox, the body is in its most sensitive, most responsive mode relative to environmental input. Separately, research on geomagnetic field fluctuations has documented elevated sensitivity in the nervous system during periods of solar activity, which tends to peak near equinoxes. 2 independent mechanisms, both operating simultaneously during the equinox window, both producing heightened biological responsiveness. The mechanics that make 3 forces more powerful than 2, or 1, are not mystical, they are structural. The law of gender, in the Hermetic framework, describes creation as requiring 2 forces, the generative and the productive. But the synthesis of those 2 forces into an actual new condition requires a third element, the catalytic principle that resolves the tension between them into something neither could produce alone. 1 force produces direction. 2 forces produce tension and movement. 3 forces produce the synthetic resolution that allows a new condition to crystallize. This is why the triad carries the name of creation in every tradition that mapped it. And in March 2026, the 3 forces converging are precisely this structure. Force 1, equinox, is the threshold generative. Force 2, blood moon completion, is the productive gestating. Force 3, the hermetic triad of the month itself, is the catalytic synthesizing. The structure of creation is present in the structure of the month. You are not separate from the forces converging in March 2026. You are inside them, whether you recognize them or not. The practitioner who understands this does not try to create the forces. They do not attempt to summon the equinox or the blood moon's energy as though these were resources to be extracted. They position themselves inside forces that are already running. The way a surfer does not create the wave. They read its structure, time their entry, and move with it. The recognition you are developing right now is the reading. The protocol that follows is the timing. And the practice across the 3 phases of this month is the movement that positions you inside the current rather than on the shore watching it pass. In the temple at Chichen Itza, twice a year, at the spring and fall equinoxes, an optical phenomenon occurs that is not an accident of construction. The afternoon sun creates a pattern of light and shadow on the steps of the pyramid that takes the form of a descending serpent, precisely timed to coincide with the equinox moment. The builders of this structure oriented its geometry to create a specific visual event at a specific celestial moment. In Angkor Wat, the main entrance is oriented to the spring equinox sunrise, a design choice that required astronomical observation and precise architectural execution centuries before the structure was built. The Norse tradition described the equinox as the point where Freya, the force of abundance and creation, was most accessible to those who had prepared themselves. In the Vedic tradition, the equinox was Vasanta, the awakening, the annual rebirth of creative force. 4 independent traditions, 1 astronomical event. Identical conclusion. This is when the creative force is most available to the practitioner who arrives at the threshold prepared. The window of March 2026 carries something that cannot be rescheduled. Every year has an equinox. Not every equinox falls within 30 days of a blood moon. Not every blood moon falls in a month whose numerological structure encodes the creative triad. Not every year of the creative triad falls in a year numerologically coded as the unity, the one from which the 3 manifests. The specific convergence of this month does not repeat in the years immediately surrounding it. What is available in March 2026 will not be available in exactly this configuration in March 2027 or March 2025. The window is not theoretical. It is this month, and the month is already in motion. If you've been applying these principles but feel like something's still blocking the full result, like you can feel the forces but can't locate the entry point, I left something for you in the first pinned comment. It's for those who are ready to move from recognition to activation. The protocol for working with the 3 forces of March 2026 is not a ceremony in the traditional sense. It is a 3-phase practice sequence, 1 continuous orientation across the 3 peaks of the convergence window. 3 phases because 3 forces, but not 3 separate practices. 1 sustained alignment that intensifies at each phase. Phase 1 is preparation, spanning the period between the blood moon and the equinox, March 3rd through March 19th. Phase 2 is activation, centered on the equinox itself, the 3-day window of March 19th through March 21st. Phase 3 is integration, the 10 days following the activation, March 22nd through March 31. The 3 phases do not operate independently. Each one builds directly on the previous. Every mystery school that preserved an equinox protocol, and the records we have come from the Hermetic, Pythagorean, Egyptian, and early alchemical traditions, structured it in this same tripartite sequence. A preparation period in which the practitioner does the internal work of aligning their field before the threshold arrives. A threshold period in which the alignment is activated by the amplified energetic conditions of the equinox itself. And an integration period in which the activated condition is anchored into the ordinary patterns of daily life before the equinox energy dissipates. The structure was not arbitrary. It mirrors the law of rhythm: outward swing, preparation; peak, activation; inward swing, integration, applied to the practitioner's relationship to a specific energetic convergence. A common way to approach a month like this is to treat the equinox as the starting point, to arrive at March 20th unprepared and attempt to perform an activation from a standing start. The Convergence protocol inverts this. The equinox is not where the work begins. It is where the work that began on March 3rd reaches its release point. The practitioner who arrives at March 20th, having spent 17 days in deliberate preparation, is not performing the same practice as the practitioner who arrives without that preparation. One is releasing what has been fully formed in the gestation period. The other is starting a process at the point when the window is already at its peak. The preparation period is not optional. It is what makes the activation functional. Phase 1. Preparation. March 3rd through March 19th, 17 days. The blood moon opened the gestation cycle on March 3rd. The work of the preparation period is to consciously engage with what was activated or what needed to be activated during that blood moon window and to bring it into the fully formed state it needs to be in before the equinox releases it. This is not abstract. It is a specific daily practice that you can begin tonight, regardless of where in March you are watching this. The 5 practices of the preparation period are not complex. Each one takes less than 10 minutes. Together, they constitute the daily maintenance of the intention field during the gestation period. What do the 5 preparation practices look like in actual execution? Each practice maps onto one of the Hermetic laws, giving the preparation period a structure that is both practical and operationally precise. Practice 1. The morning anchor. 5 minutes before engaging any external input, hold the desired condition as already constituted in the mental medium, not as a visualization of something desired, but as a recognition of something already present at the level from which physical reality originates. Practice 2. The correspondence map. Practice 3. The frequency calibration. 3 simultaneous inputs: breath, posture, mental image, held for 90 seconds. Practice 4. The polarity scan. Practice 5. The rhythm alignment, identifying what phase of the Hermetic cycle you are in and confirming that your actions that day match the phase. Practice 1 in the preparation period carries a specific quality that differs from the ordinary morning anchor. The blood moon opened something, a condition, a possibility, an intention, and the morning anchor in this phase holds that specific thing as already constituted, not in general and focused. 5 minutes. The condition you are carrying from the blood moon, held in the mental medium as already real. No second-guessing the choice of what to hold. The choice was made at the blood moon. The preparation period sustains and deepens it. Consistency is what transforms the anchor from an exercise into a field, the quality of mental substance that the Alexandrian practitioners described as the true foundation of every external change. Take a piece of paper. Draw a vertical line down the center. On the left side, write the condition in your external life that you want to shift. Not a general category, a specific condition. One thing. On the right side, write what that condition is corresponding to internally. What pattern, orientation, or belief at the internal level is producing the external condition you named on the left. The law of correspondence is not a tool for reading the world as metaphor. It is a diagnostic instrument. The external condition is always a precise reflection of an internal condition. The map you are creating is not symbolic. It is a causal diagram. What you name on the right side of the paper is the actual location of the cause you need to address. The preparation period gives you 17 days to address it. For practices 3 and 4, frequency calibration and polarity scan, the preparation period has a specific instruction that inverts what you might expect. In the preparation period, The goal of the polarity scan is not transmutation. It is diagnosis. You are locating yourself precisely on the polarity scale, identifying where you currently sit between the pole of what you don't want and the pole of what you do want. This is not about feeling better. It is about knowing your actual position. The equinox is the transmutation point. What you carry to the equinox is what gets transmuted. Arriving at the equinox without knowing your position is like arriving at a starting line without knowing which direction you're running. Practice 5, rhythm alignment, requires a single honest assessment each morning. Is today an outward swing or an inward swing? Is the current phase of your life in expansion or consolidation? The answer determines the quality of action that is appropriate for that day. During the outward phase, you extend, build, and advance. During the inward phase, you anchor, consolidate, and strengthen what was built. The preparation period between March 3 and March 19th has its own rhythmic character. It is, by definition, a gestation period, which means it is primarily an inward swing phase. The appropriate action during gestation is not aggressive external movement. It is deepening the preparation so that what arrives at the equinox threshold is fully formed. Something is shifting in the patterns, becoming more obvious, more repetitive, more impossible to dismiss as coincidence. Dreams are intensifying. The same scenarios, the same people, the same unresolved themes returning with increasing frequency. Situations that seemed dormant are suddenly requiring attention. Relationships that had reached a comfortable stasis are becoming clarified in one direction or another. Old decisions are surfacing, asking to be revisited. None of these are distractions from the preparation. All of them are the preparation. The correspondence principle making itself visible at an accelerated rate as the equinox approaches is not a sign that things are getting complicated. It is a sign that the gestation period is working. The internal patterns are surfacing so they can be addressed before the equinox threshold arrives. Why are the 17 days between March 3 and March 20th the specific window they are? Because the gestation period following a blood moon or lunar eclipse has been tracked by multiple traditions as lasting approximately 17 to 21 days. The period in which the energy activated at the lunar peak moves through its natural formation process before it is ready to be released into manifestation. In numerological terms, 17 is one of the traditional numbers of transformation. 1, 12, 7 to 8, the infinity number, the number of cycles completing and renewing. The ancient Egyptians specifically noted the 17-day relationship between certain lunar events and the equinox in their temple calendars. The gap between the blood moon and the equinox is not accidental. It is the natural gestation duration that the convergence itself encodes. Now the threshold, March 20th, is the peak, but the equinox activation does not operate as a single-point event. It operates as a 3-day threshold. March 19th, 20 and 21 each carry distinct functional qualities in the equinox protocol. March 19 is the approach, the day on which the preparation phase closes and the clearing happens. March 20th is the peak, the day of the activation sequence itself, the release point for everything gestated since March 3rd. March 21st is the first integration day, the beginning of the inward swing that anchors what was released at the peak. The 3-day threshold mirrors the structure of the Hermetic triad. Approach, the preparation becoming the 1, peak, the synthesis becoming the 2, the tension of release, integration, the 3, the new condition taking form. March 19th, arrival day, the clearing, and here is the inversion that the protocol requires. March 19th is not a day of action in the generative sense. It is a day of deliberate release. Everything the preparation period identified as misaligned, the left-right correspondence maps you've been maintaining, the polarity positions you've been diagnosing, the patterns that surfaced and were addressed. All of it completes on March 19th. The releasing is specific, not a general letting go in the emotional sense, but the intentional closing of the preparation work. You have 17 days of material. March 19th is when you close the preparation and arrive at the threshold empty. Not empty of intention, but empty of the accumulated residue of what you were carrying that you identified and addressed. You arrive at the peak, carrying only what is aligned. March 20th, the activation sequence. 5 steps. The sequence begins at dawn, the moment the sun rises on equinox day, and unfolds across the first 2 hours of the morning before any external engagement begins. Step 1. Establish the mental substance. Step 2. The correspondence anchor. Step 3. The equinox breath sequence. Step 4. The vocalization practice. Step 5. The deliberate pause. What makes this sequence an activation rather than a ritual is the precision of each step and the continuity between them. Each step builds directly on the previous, creating a single integrated sequence rather than 5 separate exercises performed in order. What are the 5 steps in practical terms? Step 1. 5 minutes of the focused morning anchor, holding the specific condition that was gestated since March 3rd as already constituted in the mental medium. Step 2. The correspondence anchor. Place the correspondence map you built during the preparation period in front of you. Look at the right side, the internal condition you identified as the cause. Hold it as already transmuted. Step 3. The equinox breath sequence. Step 4. The vocalization practice. Step 5. The deliberate pause. Each step carries specific instructions. Together they constitute the complete activation sequence for the equinox threshold. Step 1 of the March 20 activation carries a specific quality of recognition that differs from the ordinary morning anchor. The 17 days of preparation have built a field, a sustained mental substance around the condition you've been holding. On March 20th, what you are recognizing is not the condition as something you want to create. You are recognizing it as something that has been forming in the gestation period since March 3rd, something that has been building in the mental medium and is, at this threshold moment, ready to be released into manifestation. The distinction is not subtle. One orientation holds a condition as absent and desired. The other holds a condition as present and releasing. The equinox amplifies the orientation you arrive with. Arriving at the equinox in the releasing orientation is what the 17 days of preparation were building toward. A glass of water placed in direct morning light, the light of the equinox sunrise entering through a window, touching the water. 3 words, written on a separate piece of paper, not sentences, words, the name of what you are releasing, the name of what you are anchoring, the name of what you are activating, not "I want abundance," the word abundance, not "I release fear," the word fear. 3 words. The specificity is not ceremonial, it is linguistic precision. The mind works with the precision of the language it is given. 3 words carry a quality of focus that a sentence cannot. And the glass of water beside those 3 words is a correspondence anchor, above the light of the equinox. Below, the water receiving the light, and the words beside it. Step 3. The equinox breath sequence. Breathe in for 4 counts, hold for 4, release for 8. The ratio of 4 to 4-8 is not arbitrary. It mirrors the structure of the equinox itself. The in-breath, the gathering, the hold, the balance point, the exact moment of equinox, the out-breath, the release twice as long as the gathering. Perform this breath sequence 12 times. In the Hermetic tradition, 12 is the number of completion. 12 months, 12 signs, 12 hours of light on the equinox. 12 rounds of 4 to 4-8 takes approximately 6 minutes. During those 6 minutes, Hold nothing, no intention, no image, no mental substance. The breath sequence alone. This is the structural emptying that precedes the vocalization. The mystery schools that preserved equinox protocols consistently included a sound practice as the fourth step. The specific tones varied by tradition. The Egyptian tradition used specific vowel sounds. The Pythagorean tradition used specific musical intervals. What they shared was the principle: sound is vibration made audible, and the equinox threshold is the point of maximum vibrational responsiveness. The modern equivalent, verified to produce measurable physiological effects, is a simple, sustained humming tone in the key of the practitioner's own natural speaking resonance. 2 minutes. The hum felt as vibration in the chest cavity, in the sternum, in the rib cage. Not performed loudly, not directed outward, directed inward. The law of vibration applied directly to the physical body at the equinox threshold. Step 5. The deliberate pause. And here is the inversion that the protocol requires. The activation does not end with an action. It ends with a deliberate stopping. After the 4 preceding steps, you stop. You do not check whether the practice worked. You do not assess what you felt during the sequence. You do not return to the correspondence map or the 3 words on the paper. You stop, and you begin your day as though nothing unusual has occurred. This stopping is not dismissal of the practice, it is the completion of it. The practitioners who understood the law of gender, specifically the necessity of allowing the productive receptive principle to complete its work, knew that the activation was not the final step. The release of the activation into the medium of consciousness was. The deliberate pause is that release. The Hermetic Triad activation on March 20th adds one specific element to the 5-step sequence. After the activation is complete and the deliberate pause has been held, take 3 conscious breaths. Not the equinox breath sequence, 3 natural breaths. With each breath, recognize one of the 3 states simultaneously. With the first breath, the state of being, what you already are at the level of consciousness. With the second breath, the state of doing, what the activation has set in motion. With the third breath, the state of having, what is already constituted in the mental medium as reality. 3 breaths, 3 recognitions, not sequential aspirations, simultaneous recognitions of 3 dimensions of the same condition. This is the triad in practice, the 1 becoming the 3, completing the activation sequence. What happens on March 21st, the day after? The tradition prescribes something that runs against every instinct to evaluate whether the activation worked. March 21st is the first integration day, and its instruction is observation without evaluation. Not, did it work? Not, I felt something. Does that mean it's real? Not, I didn't feel much. Was I doing it wrong? Observation only. On March 21st, you return to the correspondence map and add a 3rd column on the right edge. Evidence. In the evidence column, you write anything that you notice, any external event, any internal shift, any changed quality of attention or interaction that corresponds to the condition you were activating. Small things, things that wouldn't normally be recorded. This is the beginning of the integration tracking. Something in you, on the morning of March 21st, will feel quieter than the day before. Not diminished, quieter. Like the quality of the air in a room after something significant has been said, and before the response arrives. The equinox activation does not resolve itself in a flash of visible result on March 21st. It settles, the way a stone dropped into still water settles after the ripples move outward. The instruction for March 24 is not to hold the activation in your awareness or to perform additional practices to amplify it. The instruction is to be present to the ordinary texture of the day, watching without investment, noticing what corresponds. The gestation that began on March 3rd completed at the equinox. The integration that begins on March 21st is the final phase. the process of the activated condition, finding its form in the actual patterns of your life. The integration phase, March 22nd through March 31st, 10 days. In these 10 days, the correspondence map becomes a daily instrument, not for analysis, but for tracking. Each morning, 3 minutes. Look at the evidence column you began on March 21st. Add anything that appeared the previous day that corresponds in any way, at any scale, to the condition that was activated. Externally, events, encounters, opportunities, closures. Internally, shifts in the quality of attention, changes in habitual response patterns, recognitions that arrive without effort. The correspondence map during the integration phase is a living document of Law 2 in operation. It makes visible what is already happening, and what it makes visible, it amplifies. Each morning for the next 10 days, a specific piece of paper, the correspondence map, the evidence column filling in from the bottom up as each day adds its correspondences to the previous ones. This is not journaling in the reflective sense. It is empirical tracking. You're observing the law of correspondence in operation in your specific life, during the specific 10-day period, following the specific activation that occurred at the specific equinox threshold of March 2026. Every tradition that preserved an equinox protocol emphasized the integration period as equally important as the activation, because the integration period is where the activation becomes anchored in the structural patterns of ordinary experience, rather than remaining an energetic event that dissipates without residue. Don't expect the breakthrough to announce itself as spiritual. That is the inversion the integration period teaches. The result of the equinox activation will not arrive as a vision, a peak experience, or an unmistakably mystical event. It will arrive as a phone call, a conversation, a shifted dynamic in a relationship, an unexpected opening in a situation that had been closed. It will arrive looking like ordinary life, arranged slightly differently from how it was arranged before. The practitioners who tracked these convergence protocols over generations noted the same pattern consistently. The manifestations that followed equinox activations were practical, concrete, and frequently arrived through channels that were already present in the person's life, not through new channels that appeared from nowhere, but through existing ones that suddenly carried different content. The timing of results is governed by 3 hermetic laws, working simultaneously. Law 5, rhythm, tells you that results arrive in alignment with the current phase. During the integration period, which is primarily an inward swing phase, the results tend to appear as internal shifts first and external changes second. Law 6, cause and effect, tells you that some effects are immediate. They arrive within the first 3 days of the integration period, while others are on longer causal chains that take the full 10 days or beyond to complete. Law 2, correspondence, tells you to watch the macro scale first, because the macro scale changes in correspondence with the internal work before the microscale changes become visible in your personal circumstances. All 3 laws are operating simultaneously during the integration period. The tracking practice makes them all legible. The record of what practitioners observed following equinox convergences, specifically convergences where multiple forces arrive simultaneously, consistently describes a particular quality of the 10-day integration period, an acceleration in the resolution of situations that had been stalled, often without any additional external effort by the practitioner. Relationships clarified. Decisions that had been circling without resolution suddenly found their ground. Opportunities that had been approaching from a distance made contact. The practitioners who noted this pattern attributed it not to the equinox as a supernatural force, but to the alignment principle. When the internal field is aligned through the preparation and activation phases, the external circumstances have less resistance to organize around the direction of that alignment. The force required to move a situation drops dramatically when the internal correspondent of that situation has already been addressed. Something in you will want, in the days after March 20th, to verify whether the practice worked, to check whether the activation produced a result, to look for evidence that confirms what you did. That impulse is understandable. It is also the mechanism most likely to interrupt the integration period if acted on fully. The verification impulse, when it becomes active checking, when it becomes evaluation, when it becomes a need for the result to arrive on a specific timeline, contracts the receptive principle that the seventh Hermetic law describes as necessary for creation to complete. The integration period requires that you track without evaluating, notice without assessing, record without judging. The question, is it working, is not a question for the integration period. The integration period will answer that question on its own terms, in its own timing, without being asked. March cannot be stopped, not because this month is mystically unique in some permanent sense. Every month carries its own energetic texture, but because the three forces that are converging in March 2026 were already in motion before the month began, and they will complete their convergence whether recognized or not. The equinox arrives on March 20th regardless. The blood moon's 30-day gestation cycle completes at the equinox regardless. The Hermetic triad of the third month, meeting the year of the one, runs its structure regardless. The forces do not require your participation to operate. What changes when you participate is not the forces, it is your relationship to the forces. Conscious participation means the forces move through a prepared field. Unconscious non-participation means the forces move through an unprepared one. The month is the same. The experience of the month and what it leaves behind is not. You didn't need this video to be inside the forces of March 2026. You were already inside them. The equinox was going to arrive. The blood moon cycle was going to complete. The Hermetic triad was going to run its structure through the third month. What this transmission offered was the map, the vocabulary for what you were already moving through. And the vocabulary matters, because vocabulary, in this context, is not merely descriptive, it is directional. When you can name what you are inside, you can position yourself within it deliberately rather than being moved by it without understanding why. What separates those who use this month from those who simply survive it? Not talent, not prior spiritual experience, not a natural gift for this kind of work. One practice sustained across 3 phases. The preparation period, 5 daily practices, each less than 10 minutes, maintained from wherever you are in March until the equinox arrives. The activation, the 5-step sequence on March 20th, with the Hermetic triad integration at the end. The integration period, the correspondence map, 3 minutes each morning for 10 days. That is the entire protocol. 3 phases, 1 sustained orientation. The rest, what the month produces in your actual circumstances, depends on what was already in your preparation field when the equinox amplified it. 2 people move through March 2026. Both feel the month's compression, the sense that things are moving differently, that patterns are surfacing, that decisions are carrying more weight. The first person attributes this to external conditions, manages it reactively, and arrives at March 31st with the month behind them. The second person recognizes the compression as the 3 forces making themselves felt, performs the 3-phase protocol, and arrives at March 31st with something that was not there before. Both people experienced the same month. Both were inside the same forces. The only difference was the orientation. One person was managed by the forces, the other was positioned inside them. The forces themselves are neutral. What they amplify is what the practitioner brings to the threshold. Tonight you received 3 things. The map of the 3 forces converging in March 2026, the understanding of how they interact to create a window that is qualitatively different from any month surrounding it, and the three-phase protocol for positioning yourself inside the convergence consciously. The forces are real. The equinox is an astronomical fact. The blood moon's gestation cycle follows measurable lunar mechanics. And the Hermetic Triad is a documented principle of the tradition that has been preserved for 20 centuries. What you do with the map and the protocol determines what March 2026 deposits in the trajectory of your life. The part of you that brought you here tonight already knew this month was different, not as a mystical insight, as Law 6 operating. Every decision you made in the weeks preceding this moment was a cause in a causal chain that led you here. You were tracing the structure of March 2026 before you had the vocabulary for it. The recognition you've been feeling, the sense that this month carries something, was not projection. It was the law of correspondence at the internal scale, the resonance between the forces operating externally and something in your internal field that responds to their quality. The recognition came first. The vocabulary arrived tonight. The practice is what comes next. Every mystery school that preserved an equinox convergence protocol was transmitting something they had received, not something they had invented. The Hermetic academies of Alexandria received from the Egyptian temple tradition. The Renaissance alchemists received from the Hermetic academies. The Pythagorean tradition developed independently and arrived at the same structural principles. What you received tonight is the distillation of what all those traditions, in their different languages, agreed on. The equinox convergence requires preparation, activation, and integration. In that order, sustained across the full window, without the interruption of evaluation during the integration phase. The structure is not cultural, it is functional. It works, because the laws it rests on are operational, regardless of who is applying them. The equinox is arriving. Already, the blood moon cycle is already completing its gestation. The Hermetic Triad is already running through the structure of this month. Three forces, already in motion. The window they are creating is already open. None of this waits for your recognition of it. The recognition changes only one thing: your relationship to what is already happening. Conscious relationship to a force is not the same as unconscious exposure to it. One produces a field the force moves through with direction. The other produces a field the force moves through without it. The month cannot be stopped. What you do with the month is entirely within your field of decision. You came here tonight thinking you were going to learn about March 2026, and then something shifted the moment you recognized, in the compression you've been feeling, in the patterns that have been surfacing, in the heightened quality of each day, that the three forces were already inside your experience before you had names for them. That shift is not learning, it is recognition. And recognition, in the Hermetic framework, is not passive. It is the first act of the practice. The month didn't begin with this video, and it didn't begin on March 1st. For you, it began when the recognition started. That recognition is now named. The three forces are now mapped. The protocol is now yours. What do you do first? Tonight, the correspondence map. Take a piece of paper, draw the vertical line. Left side, the one condition in your external life that you most want to shift before the end of March. One condition, not a list. Right side, what that condition is corresponding to internally, the internal cause. Name it, not to fix it tonight, to see it. The preparation period begins with seeing. Once you see the internal correspondent, you know what you are carrying into the equinox threshold. You know what the morning anchor holds. You know what the polarity scan is diagnosing. You know what arrives at the equinox threshold to be released. 3 minutes, a vertical line, two sides of one condition. That is where March 2026 begins for you. Someone watching this is 3 days from the equinox. Someone else is watching this the night before March 20th and still has time to perform the full preparation sequence in condensed form. Someone else is watching this from within the integration period after March 20th has passed, and the protocol is still available, beginning at phase 3. All 3 of these people are inside the same month. All 3 are inside the same convergence of forces. All 3 have the same protocol available to them at whatever point they are entering it. The month does not require a perfect entry point. It requires an entry. March 2026 is not the only month that will ever matter, but it is a month in which 3 forces that require years to assemble arrived simultaneously at the same window: the equinox, the blood moon completion, the hermetic triad. One astronomical event, one energetic cycle, one numerological convergence, landing together in 31 days that are already moving, already carrying their force, already doing their work, regardless of whether you name them. Every tradition that tracked these convergences left the same record. The practitioners who recognized the window and moved inside it deliberately came out the other side, carrying something different. The window is open. The protocol is yours. The month cannot be stopped, and neither can what you choose to do inside it. If you stayed until the end, write in the comments, "I am activating." I've placed another lesson on your screen right now, your next step on this path. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.